So we're talking today with David Lennox, who's the founder and CEO of QBS, which is located out of Boston, Massachusetts. So Dave, I think it would be helpful for people to sort of know how you got into safety care in QBS.
So my background is in applied behavior analysis, quite a number of years ago. Through the years, worked in quite a few different settings, applying behavioral principles from public schools to special education arenas, psychiatric hospitals, medical settings, and so on. And I guess I felt like I had done all I could in affecting change directly in those organizations, but really enjoyed the training and consulting component of behavior analysis. And so in 2001, I went off out on my own, developed QBS, which stands for Quality Behavioral Solutions, so that we could impact the entire industry, if you will, in training and consulting activities, focusing on applied behavior analysis.
Well, tell us some of the services and opportunities that you offer through QBS.
Well, as I mentioned, we do a number of things, really focus on three different, product lines, if you will. One is training, one is consulting, and then we also have some computer software which tracks and trends behavioral events. And all those services are applied across all those different settings I mentioned and populations, so everything from preschool autistic individuals through brain injury and general development disability, psychiatric settings, and even geriatric settings. Most of our business, though, is in our largest part of the business is in training, and we have two training programs, the most popular of which is called Safety Care Behavioral Safety Training. And while it's in the genre of crisis prevention courses, like some others out there, it is significantly different by one particular feature, and that is it has a very strong foundation in applied behavior analysis. And what that means is that the processes, the skills, the competencies that we teach staff in that training curriculum are based in evidence-based behavioral strategies and protocols that have been well published, and now they're just tweaked a little to be applied into all kinds of settings to deal with preventing, minimizing, and managing behavioral challenges, particularly very severe behavioral challenges.
In terms of the safety care, talk about it from the perspective, say, of a CEO. And I'm most familiar with non-for-profit agencies, but talk to about from the perspective of a CEO why they might be interested in that.
I'd love to, thank you. Many organizations that serve people with intellectual impairments or psychiatric impairments have been moving in some degree towards a behavior analysis theme, I guess, where they are spending more time training their staff in behavioral procedures. They're dealing with more severe behaviors. They're collecting more data, consulting the research a little more. And so when they train their staff, all aspects of training, the more of that training that focuses on behavioral procedures, the more staff can integrate their skills. So what often happens is a setting, developmental setting, a residential setting, a workshop, something like that, they'll train their staff in how to run behavior programs, for instance. And then when they teach them in a crisis prevention course to deal with real severe behavioral challenges, they'll teach them in some other repertoire that's not consistent or maybe even incompatible with the other behavioral skills they've trained.
Wow.
Well, because safety care is based on the same behavioral strategies that they're already teaching their staff, it integrates well, it adds to their competencies, strengthens what they've learned already, instead of trying to teach them two separate repertoires that just get confused in delivering services.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons. It's also very cost effective. It's a trainer training model so that the CEO would have their own trainers that then can go out and train their staff. It's very positive reinforcement based, which is good for everybody wanting to go that route. So there's a number of features that I think are attractive to a CEO.
Now, I know that one of the most challenging positions in many organizations is that direct support, the sort of entry-level position where people are actually providing direct supports to people receiving services. What do you think the primary benefits are for people in those roles?
Great, good question. Of course, they're the frontline folks. They're the folks that are expected to be able to detect behavioral intervention or behavioral challenges before they happen, to de-escalate them before they happen, to to manage them if they do, and so on. And so training them in these skills more so than the expert clinicians, the professionals that consult, that show up once in a while, is so much more important. Well, safety care is designed to be targeted certainly to professionals, but clearly designed to teach competencies that can be easily acquired, easily implemented by staff of all kinds of different educational levels, cultural backgrounds, and so on. So it's particularly useful. Skill-based training, no theory, unnecessary to those people who provide direct care. Skill-based training so that they can immediately after training begin using those skills.
And for people who've implemented safety care, and my understanding is that you're in different settings, educational settings, psychiatric hospitals, geriatric settings, agencies that serve people with intellectual disabilities. What are some of the primary outcomes that people that you've observed, or some of those providers may have observed as a result of incorporating safety care?
Right. So organizations that deal with behavioral challenges see a lot of things that they have to measure. Right. Number of aggressive incidents, behavioral incidents in general, a number of injuries that staff sustain as a result of this, a number of complaints by consumers that they've been mishandled or handled too roughly. It's an aversive environment, and so on. And so those are measures that many providers track. And among our customers, those who have provided us with data, we have seen reductions in a lot of those measures. So, for instance, some facilities or organizations may track the number of times that they have to actually engage in restraint behavior.
Yeah.
How many times they have to restrain consumers and individuals who are aggressive. After our training, we are seeing significant reductions in the number of restraints needed, which is good. Although we train it,
yeah.
we really want to focus on the prevention and minimization sections of the training. And so by seeing those reductions, although they're implementing safety care in conjunction with other measures, we think safety care, and they report that safety care is contributing to those reductions. Also reporting that it has helped reduce injuries, something we ask to keep track of also. And so those are very important measures that have an impact on the quality of life of the individuals, quality of life of the staff, the fiscal nature of the facility, regulatory concerns, and so on.
Right. Now, I certainly know that safety care is much more than just therapeutic holds, right? And you've highlighted things like de-escalation procedures, maybe interventions, maybe some guiding, some prompting that may not involve sort of full physical hold. My understanding, though, is that there's some providers out there and some CEOs, leaders, that feel like we really shouldn't be teaching strategies for dealing with, real aggressive, severe sort of behavioral challenges. Some agencies I've heard have procedures, well, we don't do those things, so we're going to call 911.
Right.
What's your sort of thought about that as a policy?
Yeah, it's a very controversial topic, obviously, in all kinds of settings right now. There's legislation being proposed before Congress right now that's considering limiting significant use of restraint, and some organizations that think that restraint shouldn't be used ever, no matter what. And we actually would support that too, in a way. We don't like using restraints, and we feel actually a bit uncomfortable teaching it, though we do it quite well. For a couple of things to say about that. First of all, any training program like that should clearly focus a great deal of time on those things that would prevent or minimize aggression, and so restraints wouldn't be needed. Those organizations that teach restraint, like we do, as a necessary evil, if you will, of the curriculum, should also spend a great deal of time talking about restraint prevention and reduction. And as you know, we do a lot of presentations and trainings in that topic. But there are certainly severe cases in many settings. In fact, as we have become, as a society, become very good at deinstitutionalizing individuals, getting them out of acute care, secured, locked, congregate living settings into the community, we are taking natural risks. We're taking risks and seeing those behavioral challenges happening. And we want them to be able to live in those settings and be safe. So inarguably, those things are going to happen periodically. We want the staff to know how to respond to those safely, prevent and minimize if possible, but respond to them safely, terminate those quickly, and without having to reinstitutionalize, send somebody to acute psych where it's simply a disruption in their provision, their services, and not call 911 and have police who are well-meaning but sometimes use procedures that aren't therapeutic. So we'd rather teach them as an emergency procedure to be used very limited in imminent danger situations where harm is extremely likely. Use it safely, teach them so that they don't use alternatives that aren't trained or are unsafe, and then return to better procedures.
And I know that some agencies where maybe they choose to go with safety care or maybe alternatives, that it's not necessarily uncommon, even within a particular agency or facility, that there might be procedures in place that, maybe particular houses or units might be identified for more rigorous training in the more intrusive sorts of holds and things. So that's one way I know that some community agencies have sort of, struggled with this dilemma.
Yeah, and safety care is actually designed to be able to be partitioned out like that. Without going through the manual too much, there's several sections, and the organization is able to use, after we do the trainer training and then they decide what they want to use, they can teach the early components to staff who they would never want to use the more rigorous components of holds. They can then, for those small units, those small parts of the agency that might deal with higher behavioral acuity, more severe behaviors, teach only those staff how to use it.
Yeah.
And again, always learning the prevention and minimization sections first as prerequisites. But one of the things that we hear, and we never want somebody to leave the training saying, I just got restraint training. And we rarely hear that as a result of safety care training.
That's great. That's great. I guess maybe it would be helpful for people to understand some of the components that are included in safety care. Maybe some of the behavioral principles or strategies that are emphasized in the curriculum might be helpful.
Sure. We certainly know from all of the literature on behavior analysis and challenging behaviors that any way that dealing with behavioral challenges has to involve a lot of reinforcement of alternative behavior. Every behavior support plan we write should involve focusing on alternatives to the challenging behaviors and high density, frequent reinforcement for those alternatives, whether they be social skills or adaptive skills or something. So those should be part of any training program designed to prevent or minimize behavioral challenges and hopefully prevent the need for any kind of hold. And so those are competencies: differential reinforcement, behavioral momentum, functional communication training. These are all components that are evidence-based, which means that they've been demonstrated incredibly effective with a wide array of populations in teaching skills and minimizing behavioral challenges. So those are actually competencies that we put in our curriculum. We've just immersed the prevention and minimization sections so that staff, before they move on to anything else, have to demonstrate competency in differential reinforcement. They have to demonstrate competency in behavioral momentum and functional communication training and a number of other behavioral procedures. If they have those in the repertoire, even if the organization already trains those, we train them and demonstrate the competency within the context of escalatory behaviors, of behavioral antecedents, of pre-aggression behaviors. So those are very important competencies that are rarely seen in crisis prevention courses, but fit perfectly, enhance the skills, and further reduce the likelihood need of a hold.
Yeah, that's great. And I know, I get a lot of requests around challenging behavior and how to support people, that really need sort of the extra supports and things. And so I spent a lot of time, looking at different products and whatnot. And I was really, really, impressed with safety care. Why don't you talk a little bit in terms of the training process? If an agency, chooses to go in the direction of safety care, just maybe some of the, you certainly have thought through it a lot more than just talking at people, for 2 days worth. Talk a little bit about what sorts of principles are used, or how you sort of constructed safety care to ensure that quality learning occurred.
Sure, great. Well, first of all, the model is a typical trainer training model. We didn't invent that. So So if an organization calls us, they want some trainers on their staff. One of our master trainers, all of whom are behavior analysts, board certified behavior analysts, will come out. So these are not just people who know safety care. These are well-trained behavior analysts who have worked in a wide variety of settings, had to deal with behavioral challenges, and, by the way, have ongoing consultation relationships with various providers so that they never lose contact with the ultimate consumer. So our trainers come out. A trainer training model is pretty standard. We train your staff as if they are new to the material, and then the next part of the trainer training is them demonstrating their ability to train those skills. But the way in which we train it is actually pretty unique. We use behavioral teaching strategies that are evidence-based to train trainer skills. So to be more specific, there's a wide array of procedures that have been demonstrated to lead to better acquisition and maintenance of skills. For instance, we use a lot of reinforcement in training staff. We also use a collection of procedures that are under the name of errorless learning strategies. And
that sounds good.
It does sound good, right? The basis, although it's counter to common knowledge, most people think that trial and error learning is the best way. And I've spoken about this a lot. And there are a lot of data to suggest that's not the best way. And in fact, it doesn't really make sense. Right. Trial and error suggests that errors should occur in the learning process. And frankly, in the beginning of any learning process, the more errors you have, the less likely somebody will acquire the skills that you want them to acquire. Right. So we use, as much to the extent possible, we use errorless learning strategies in the way in which we train staff to train safety care. And that collection of procedures is stuff like a lot of narration, assistance, modeling, guidance through the staff's first several attempts at doing safety care training procedures, with gradual fading of our instruction until they've done it several times with no errors. Then they are more likely to train it effectively to their staff. Yeah. And of course, then we want them to use these same procedures, errorless learning procedures and so on, when they train their staff, so their staff learned in the best way possible. So even our trainer training procedures involve evidence-based teaching, behavioral teaching procedures, so that we guarantee, as much as we can, rapid acquisition and good retention of the skills.
And I know in addition to sort of the basic trainings that you provide, you also have developed some additional modules that providers can select from if they chose. Any of those that you would highlight?
Sure, yeah. First of all, we have a core curriculum that we train most organizations in that involve those sections I told you about: prevention, minimization, and then management, which involves some releases of wrist grabs and so on, and some basic holds. But we have several different advanced modules that we refer to. They're all half-day modules and involve 2 to 3 procedures each. We have a module for small children, even though safety care is adapted very well to any age and body style and size. We have an extra advanced module on small children that has a small children carry and special reinforcement procedures and so on. We have an advanced module that's designed for highly aggressive individuals. And what we mean by that is individuals who are not very cognitively impaired, are very skilled at strategizing on how to engage in aggression and attack staff and others. Well, and those take special coordination between staff and special training and practice. So we have some special procedures for that. We also have a quite unique advanced module to deal with individuals who are medically compromised, fragile. So geriatrics, for instance, who just because they're old doesn't mean that they can't engage in behavioral challenges. People who are medically impaired, maybe have some medical condition that increases their fragility. We have special procedures for those that not only increase the likelihood of preventing or minimizing behavioral challenges, but when interaction is necessary, we have to be particularly delicate and careful so that we don't cause bruises, skin tears, falls, and so on of those individuals who are incredibly fragile. Yeah. So a subset of procedures for those individuals. So just about for everything.
Who's currently using safety care?
Sure, okay. Well, Safety Care's, QBS has been around since '97. And by the way, we developed Safety Care as our primary product because there were very few, if any, in fact none, no curricula out there addressing crises that were based on a solid applied behavior analytic foundation. So we went through years of frustration with those curricula and then decided, well, nobody else is going to do it, we're going to do it. So we've refined it through the years, and through those years, since 2001 when we started providing training. Now we have customers using Safety Care in over 25 states.
Wow.
Some of those states are using it in quite widely. For instance, in one state, we train in every school in the state. In another, we train in every psychiatric hospital in the state.
Wow.
In another, just about every community residential setting for developmentally disabled. And this has happened because we've been called, done Safety Care, and it's spread through word of mouth very quickly, and just in that industry done that. It's not designed for a particular individual population like brain injury or psychiatric or autism. It's widely applicable to all those. But word of mouth has spread it in those industries until we are able to impact the other industries. So, and those are education, mental health, developmental disability, and so on. But we're now in 25 states and in Ontario, so international.
Yeah.
And again, across a wide variety of settings and populations. So spreading quite quickly in the small number of years we've been out there.
Most systems I'm familiar with that deal with either preventing or managing extreme behavioral challenges have procedures for making sure that trained staff don't lose those competencies. Right. How have you all thought about that at Safety Care?
Yeah, we're very concerned about retention. These are, while we train staff to competency, any skill that you train somebody can be lost, non-use, or just something called behavioral drift, where over time they start doing it slightly differently. And in some of the procedures, that's not a problem, but others could have some consequences. So we're very concerned about retention. We've done a couple of things that to make sure. First, we have annual recertification of trainers, and we want trainers to recertify their staff. But frankly, that's not enough. It's essential, but it's necessary but not sufficient in making sure that they retain their skills. One of the requirements, compliance standards we have of trainers is that they train several times through the year. Okay. And so that's a requirement. If they don't do that, we do whatever we can to accommodate, to provide enhanced training to them through whatever mechanism we can to make sure that they've refreshed their skills adequately enough. However, we're still not comfortable with that. So a number of other things we do. First, we provide them with a number of recommendations and supportive materials to try to get them, we can't impose this, but try to get them to do additional trainings, enhanced trainings, refreshers, and so on with their staff. Even something as silly as something we call Technique of the Week, where we encourage them and we provide Technique of the Week calendars and all kinds of little things to make it a little more fun, so that every week they review with their staff in whatever forum they can one of the procedures in Safety Care, so that through the year they've reviewed them several times, make sure that everybody's a little sharp on them, and behavioral drift or forgetting doesn't happen. The last thing we do right now is provide a free web-based behavioral refresher, a live one. And so every 2 weeks, one or more of our master trainers are on a web stream, streaming video live, and reviewing for whoever wants to tune in on their internet, reviewing 3 to 4 procedures. And they rotate those procedures, so we circulate them and make sure everybody's seen them. And we also have those videotaped or recorded so that they can be revisited by individuals. But that's a free service. It's for anybody who wants to join that's been a trainer. In any way we can, we're trying to enhance and retain their skills.
I think that's really unique. I've never heard of anybody providing that sort of training.
You know, there's a small cost to us, small labor for us, but it's a great gain to make sure that those skills are still retained as perfectly as they can, so that it reduces any misuse, misapplication of some procedures that need to be taken seriously.
We've been talking today with Dr. David Lennox. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.